Hello everyone, I hope you're having a brilliant Easter holiday. I hope you've been able to relax and enjoy yourselves, and you're looking forward to the exciting term that we've got ahead. This is an update that I put together with members of the SLT that talks about things to think about and priorities, key information for the summer term ahead. We're sending it out early because people have told us in the past they like to get these things early, but please don't feel like that you have to watch it right now. But certainly by the end of the day on Monday, every single person in the school needs to have taken this on board, please. So we'll start inevitably with COVID. Lots of positives going on here right now. Fantastic, that's happening every week. That number gets higher. Transmission rates in the community are very low, roughly where they were in September, and the warmer weather is helpful. But there's plenty of reasons to be cautious too. So unfortunately, we are likely to see an increase in cases. Let's hope that it's a gradual increase and a marginal increase, but that risk is certainly there. Although the vast majority of fatalities, people in those groups have now been vaccinated. Younger people do have a risk of longer COVID. It's important to bear that in mind. It's a small risk, but it is a risk. And you know, this situation is unpredictable. And you will have heard me say in the past that I'm an optimist when it comes to everything except for money. So I'd like to qualify that now and say I'm an optimist when it comes to everything except for money and coronavirus. So what is the school policy response to this situation? Well, we are resuming lesson observation, which is fantastic. I can't wait to get that back up and running. And if you have requests for people you'd like to observe or people you'd like to come and observe, you be feeding them through to Jamie for the weekly rota. Remember, there's that simple SISRA form that we fill in after each lesson observation. And then we are resuming leverage mentoring. Now, I know leverage mentoring actually carried on in the majority of cases, but you know, resuming it in person, the leverage mentor at the back of a classroom, observing, and then having that all-important feedback meeting where you're thinking about the next lesson and planning that together and actually practicing in quite a deliberate way how you're going to do it. So those two things themselves are going to be a big boost. Co-planning, feel free to meet in person in your department and hold co-planning meetings, as long as, and it's very important that I make this point, as long as social distancing and other control measures are in place, ventilation and so on. If you'd rather continue to meet virtually as a department, that is absolutely fine too. And there's practical reasons why you might. For example, if half of your staff are at K1 and half of them are at K2, and there's departments where there are individual members who have vulnerabilities where it would be more suitable to meet like that too. Enrichment is coming back, and if you are delivering an enrichment next week, then really a big push on the quality of that. Let's make it a compelling offer. If you're a year 12 student, you know, taking politics society, or a year 7 student taking football, you need to really immediately see the benefit of that. And form tutors, let's make sure that all the logistics and the sign up and all those arrangements are run really, really well, and the communication of the timetables, etc. And then assemblies are going to work in the next few weeks on what I describe as a blended approach. So there will still be a virtual assembly that the whole school will watch each week. And remember, I've talked about form tutors bringing sufficient kind of formality to those assemblies and make sure that they're watched properly with students sat up straight, no bags on the desk, no coats on. And as staff, we're modelling the listening behaviour that we want from students. But in addition to that, in a few priority situations, we will have in-person assemblies. And to be honest, we were doing a bit of that in March as well. So we spoke, for example, to Year 11 and Year 13 in the theatre when we had to. Hang on one second. Sorry about that. So next week there's a virtual assembly, a short one from me that's just a welcome back. But then we're having some in-person assemblies as follows. So Wednesday during tutor period, Sophie's going to be talking to Year 9. Big term for Year 9. They've got their options process getting finalised. They've got their parents' evening coming up very shortly at the end of April. So that's Wednesday during tutor period, Year 9. Thursday during tutor period is Year 12. And Friday during tutor period is Year 11. So a blended approach, as I said. But then a lot of stuff just carries on, if I'm honest, colleagues. So masks indoors and in the corridors and in lessons as well. If you are a member of staff and you're teaching from the front, you can remove your mask. If you're a member of staff and you're sat stationary in a meeting with good distancing, you can take your mask off as well. Students need to keep their masks on in lessons and in assemblies as well because they can't distance. If you're on duty at a point where students come into the building, like from the playground at break or lunch, for example, make sure you're reminding them, please, to get their masks on, because once they're in the building without a mask, their chance of receiving a detention are much higher. And please always have a supply of masks on you, so that if you do issue a mask infringement detention, you're also issuing them a free mask at the same time, so they don't then repeatedly get detentions. Home testing twice a week, please, that's students and staff. Lawrence Weeks is taking over from Niall Dubbigan the testing regime and all the communication and management about that, so look out for instructions from him and from your DOL on testing. And the point I really want to make about the home testing kits is that, they are valuable items. We shouldn't see examples of them being left in classrooms or kind of not valued by the kids. So really think about that when you're handing them out and logging that it's all done as you'd want it to be. We'll stick with virtual briefing and training for now. Seating plans, always keep them in a tight seating plan, and don't let students move between the seats. In the lower school, the form tutor is the owner of the seating plan. If you do ever have to improvise a seating arrangement, just take a picture so you've got a record of that in case any contact tracing comes up. Just like you'll see us in assemblies, we always take a picture at the beginning so we know who sat next to who, and the person leading the assembly should always do that. And if we do have to ask you for a seating plan at any point to help us contact trace, then please be responsive to that. It's great. The 2 metre 15 minute rule, it's so funny to think all this stuff just a year ago, we wouldn't have known what any of it meant. But 2 metre 15 minute rule is important to keep in our minds. And when I talk to Public Health England, as I do periodically, they often say to me, it's not just distance, it's time as well. So short interactions with distancing in well-ventilated spaces are much lower risk. And just keep that in your mind, because the more people you breach the 2 metre 15 minute rule with, the more potential virus spread and also isolation implications there are. I'll try to speed up now. Co-teaching is paused. So this is quite an important thing to highlight, and we've talked about this a lot. Co-teaching is a significant financial investment for the school. It's fundamental to what we do in terms of staff development and the staff culture that we want, and student progress. It has a massive impact on student progress. But we just think that in the next 6 weeks, there's so much going on with marking, for example. There's the potential that students are going to have to isolate at home, and we have to cater for them, which is complex, and staffing capacity helps. There's a potential that staff might have to isolate and we have to cover each other. There's some complex logistics. Anna's talked about access arrangements with all of these internal tests in year 11 and year 13, for example, and how co-teaching could help there. And also there's the fact that co-teaching in the current context is difficult because you can't circulate the room as the way you'd like. So I think on balance, let's continue to not require people to co-teach and give that time back into the staffing body for the next 6 weeks. What I would say is that I'm trusting the collaborative spirit of staff on this issue, and if you're someone who benefits significantly from that decision because you would normally have 4 or 5 hours of co-teaching, just be looking over your shoulder and just thinking about other people in the department who might not benefit as much. And the heads of department, I know, will be really strategic in the way they think about their teams and match the resources that they have with the priorities that they have over the next 6 weeks. And the heads of department should feel empowered to do that. And the last thing I want to say is that I know that even though we have taken this decision to not require people to do the co-teaching, I'm very aware, and I'm extremely grateful that in a large number of cases people have just carried on co-teaching, and I think that's because they really see the benefits actually in terms of student progress and staff development. So thank you if you've done that, but don't feel that it's a requirement in the way it would be under normal circumstances, and I hope that time back will really help. There can't be any planned absence except where it's absolutely an emergency. I'm really grateful for the way that people have had to forego CPD this year or find alternative ways to do CPD, for example, webinars after school. That applies to everyone, SLT and myself. We've all been affected by that policy decision and the way we've all made appointments outside of working hours. Again, that's a normal thing in any year. It's a really important rule. We just can't risk people being out because of the disruption it causes for students and because of the pressure it can put on staff. So bear with us on that. And then everything else that I haven't talked about, like hand washing and people with symptoms not coming in and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so I hope people feel that that is sensible and proportionate set of measures. We absolutely need to be careful, but we also need to balance that with the fact that we need to provide students with a full education and provide staff with full professional development opportunities, just like they're entitled to. Everything we're doing is, as ever, under review, and we can increase or we can loosen measures depending on events around us. And we're thinking of it in terms of 2 weekly cycles, but really we're looking at it every day. But 2 weeks of one set of arrangements in order to get a good sense of it. Staff are absolutely, I know I've said this a million times, but it's just so important. Staff are absolutely encouraged to share their concerns and their constructive suggestions for how we can do things better with us about coronavirus. You can do that via the HR department. You can do that via the anonymous COVID concerns boxes in the staff cafe at K1 and in the reception at K2. You can do that via our internal trade union reps, Doug Simon and Alex Crook. And Doug Simon I've previously announced this, but sadly leaving us at the end of this year. So there'll be a vacancy for the internal rep for NASWIT, and I'm sure Doug will be in contact with members at that point via our staff governor, Rosemary Oyewole, or directly with me and with the leadership team. We want to hear from people around this issue as and when it's needed. Okay, so this slide is rather grandly called K1 Reunification, which is firmly tongue-in-cheek. But it is a significant event for our school community that after May half term, Year 7 and Year 8 and all our K2 staff will be reunited in one building. And really, it's this change on Monday the 17th of May where Year 11 and Year 13 stop attending every single lesson every day and just start to attend for specific assessments, or perhaps after the assessments are finished for specific progression sessions. That creates the space for us to bring Year 7 and Year 8 back. So we hope that COVID cases will be low and perhaps restrictions will be a bit looser, but even if arrangements are exactly as they are at the moment with year group bubbling and so on, it will be possible to have the space for Year 7 and Year 8. So week beginning Monday the 24th of May is quite important in terms of our planning. In that week, Year 9 and Year 12 will actually move from their current zones in the building to the zones where they will finish this academic year, and we will step students through, and of course staff and form tutors through, all of the arrangements for that in advance through briefings and through the staff bulletin and DOL bulletins and so on. And that week, towards the end of that week, we will hold orientation days for Year 7 and Year 8, where they will get to come to K8 for a day, have lessons in their K1 zones, which means that when they come permanently after May half term, they are familiar with it. And we'll communicate all of this centrally to parents, so please avoid talking to parents about it just yet. I think it's important that they get the communication from us centrally first with an offer to talk about it, and I will hold a consultation session with any parents who might have questions about this first, and then we can have discussions about it between staff and parents. And then that will free up a lot of capacity to make some improvements to the Summer 2 timetable. So we originally thought that form tutors would go back to their original forms, their pre-COVID forms, once we got out the K1, K2 split. It may be that your thinking's moved on. It may be that continuity is important for you and you want to stay with that form. I think that you've got a choice, basically, and you can either wait and see the way Rupert suggests the form tutor arrangements, and he'll be doing that as we move through the weeks. Or if you have a particularly strong view about what you'd like to happen, you could talk to him in advance. He's always very happy to hear those things. But I do think that changing form tutors should happen once, so we shouldn't change for Summer 2 and then change again into next year. There'll be some improvements that are made possible in the Year 7 and 8 timetable, which is fantastic now that we're all back in one building. And there'll be some extra opportunities for staff development, for example, around co-teaching in Key Stage 5, and with more staff we'll be able to work more with key students, particularly some students who didn't learn during lockdown. So there's lots of positives there happening. It's tweaks, it's refinements rather than wholesale changes, and continuity at this stage of academic year. You want continuity within the timetable, obviously, up until the end, but there is a real opportunity there. So as ever, Rupert working closely with heads of department around what's feasible, what's sensible is going to be important, and that's something that he will do on as our plans progress. Okay, so in this slide I want to talk about the 6 inset days that we have as a school this term, and it's really incumbent on all KA staff, but particularly those of us who manage other people, to think about how to get the maximum value from these 6 days that we have. And remember, the majority of UK schools don't have 6 inset days across the whole year, let alone one term, so this really is a special thing about our academy. The first day, Monday the 19th of April, is departments thinking about curriculum and assessment planning. And I won't repeat the agendas that you've all seen in the bulletin, but I do hope that people have a really good day. There's no year team meeting on Monday the 19th of April, but there is one on Tuesday the 20th of April in the 4 to 5 p.m. Training slot. The 2 days after May half term, so that's Monday the 7th and Tuesday the 8th of June, which are traditionally partnership days where our staff can visit other schools, this year that won't be possible, so we're going to give them over to marking and moderation. Now I accept that won't be the whole answer, and there'll be plenty of marking that needs to happen outside of those 2 days, but it will help, and we're fortunate to have them in the calendar. There will also, on the second day, so Tuesday the 8th of June, be some operational work we need to do, getting ready for having year 7 and 8 back in the building. And then that final column are the 3 planning days, which is a really exciting innovation in the CPD calendar this year. And we were talking to 2 other schools who have generous allocations of inset days. There aren't many schools, but they do exist. When we were planning the calendar for this year, and they both said to us that having dedicated time with all your staff at the end of the year to finalise your plans for September is incredibly helpful. And what we're hoping is that, well, you can see there, so the extended leadership team and all support staff will be here with us in the building, but heads of department or teachers can either work here at school, or you can work from home on those days, or from wherever you are. And you know, every medium-term plan, every assessment design, every homework booklet, lesson resources should be fully in place before we go on holiday, or certainly the autumn, the first half of the autumn term. You'd want that pretty well bolted down. We'll have all aspects of our timetable, so you will not just know the classes you're teaching, but also the individual students in your class is our ambition, to be able to share that information. The roomings, the enrichment that you'll do, where your co-teaching will be, and that'll be a chance then to really think through your week. It will create the space to think about the physical environment. As an outstanding school, we need to look outstanding. We can't have mess or old exercise books. I've talked about that earlier in the academic year, and we have seen some improvement on it, but it's something we've got to keep coming back to, and there will be a chance to get displays ready for September. And then, you know, we're thinking a lot at the moment about what do the end of year exams look like, but we will have a chance there to think about how did students perform and what are the implications then in terms of forward planning. So I suppose what I'm saying is that these are, you know, 3 very full, very productive planning days, and a chance to get things sorted so we can go on holiday reassured that things are in a really good position for September. And please treat them as such, particularly, as I said, if you're someone who manages others in the organisation. Now, a lot of that is very teacher focused, and my expectation is that there are equivalent versions of those agendas for support staff, so teaching assistants, mentors, facilities, admin, IT. Those managers in those areas need to also be thinking through and outlining for people what it is that we want to cover across days like that. I'll give you an example here. This I picked up from the bulletin is something which Nikki and Jenny have produced for the SEN staff, and it's just setting out on Monday the 19th of April. It looks like a very full day, which is great. So that, you know, whenever we talk about the teaching staff, we need to be mirroring that in the other areas. Okay, we're making good progress here. So the next thing to highlight about the summer term is that it's a period where important self-evaluation and improvement planning takes place. And we're going to be sharing shortly with all staff a very full survey, which we'd like you to complete anonymously. And we really welcome constructive feedback through that on what's working well and what possibly we could change. As you would have heard me say before, the leadership team don't have a monopoly on good ideas in this school. Now, evaluation isn't just the summer term. One of the most distinctive things about KA really is that we're in effect engaged in a continuous process of evaluation and improvement. And that's what it means to be part of a school that's committed to excellence. So I'm not going to be able to, in one slide, talk about everything here, but I will be able to pull some things out. We're going to be shortly sharing a kind of written commentary on the Academy Improvement Plan for this year, short reflection really, which people can then mirror with their department improvement plans when they come to put them together later in the term. And both of those activities are really good fodder, if you like, for line management discussions and reflections. Now, when I look back at the Academy Improvement Plan, I'm struck by how much the world has moved on, really, from when we put that together. So priority 1 in the AIP is all about outcomes, and I look at that now, and I just immediately think about year 10 and year 12. And, yes, we absolutely want to do the best we can with the current year 11 and year 13, and I don't doubt that we will. But they are, I think, well catered for by the adjustments that have been made over how those grades are going to be awarded. And the reintroduction of exams next year is a challenge that we want to get onto as early as possible with year 10 and year 12. When I think about the third priority to do with staff training and lesson observation, I feel like that has gone well, but there are some things to think about. For example, the necessary reduction in lesson obs this year due to COVID has had an impact. Of course it has. And, everyone has been affected by that to an extent, but especially for staff who've joined the school more recently, that will be a factor in their development. And, we know at KA that lesson observation is a powerful form of training. So we need to maximise the chances that we've got for staff to observe expert practice over the course of this summer term. When I think about priority 4 or 5 from the AIP to do with attendance and behaviour, I think, again, progress has been made. So we have good, more distributed systems around attendance now, with form tutors taking a full role in that. I think we've been able to establish a culture where attendance is everyone's business, but we need to tackle the most stubborn cases. And for behaviour, I've been thinking a lot about this and about how when we're all back together after May half term, we can leverage the extra capacity that we've got to really instill the highest possible expectations of student behaviour and get the routines where we need them to be in terms of September. When I think about priority 6 from the AIP about becoming an anti-racist academy, we were always clear that evolving the curriculum to include better representation of black people, examples of black achievement and success, and teaching topics in a way that was just more relevant to a predominantly black and minority ethnic student body, we were always clear that that was an ongoing project, and we can't lose sight of that. And the more reading and thinking and updating we can do as we move into next year, the better. A link to all of these priorities is this conversation that we're going to be having over the course of summer term about the sequencing and the planning of the curriculum and the design of assessments. And you will see, I think, particularly for middle leaders, that the conversation between SLT and MLT and the CPD schedule is going to keep coming back to curriculum and assessment design. And I think that supports all of those priorities that I've said there. So look, in a nutshell, that success doesn't happen by accident. It happens as a consequence of very carefully considered planning. And what I've tried to do there is just to highlight some things that we want to think about as we move through the coming weeks. Okay, so this is the last substantive slide that I have. There's just one short slide to finish off. It talks about GCSE and A-level grading. Anna is leading a very important meeting on Monday the 19th during the inset day about this issue. She's going to talk about calculating grades, about the design of the assessments, building on the very detailed guidance she's put out already on those issues, and also the checks and balances that we need against any potential biases and the quality assurance that we could put in. The only way we will do this as objectively as we need to and as the students deserve is by thinking explicitly about those issues of unconscious bias and the kind of other matters relating to arriving at the grade, which Anna will cover. I know that the heads of department will, taking the ideas from Monday, work through in co-planning meetings with their teachers of year 11 and year 13 so that people feel well supported. It's very important that people read the guidance for themselves. Lots of guidance has come out over Easter. I think the exam board specific guidance is key alongside the JCQ general advice. Please don't think that you're not required to read that because somebody else is going to read it and summarise it for you. It may be that we do put out documents that interpret things and highlight things, but there's an underlying assumption that all teachers are reading this guidance which is being published. And I'm not saying you have to have read it over Easter, but by the time you begin to calculate the grades, you need to have taken it on board. Anna will point people in the direction, but a lot of it is available online. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this saying they've already read it. That would be true of all schools, not just KA. It's designed for teachers to be read by teachers. Probity and integrity are absolutely key. So the principle of candidate independence is central to how we go about this. We can't do the work for them. And I know that sounds obvious, but you understand as why head of centre, I really want to emphasise that message. At most, you can treat some of this assessed work like an NEA, a non-examined assessment. So, for example, general feedback, on things that people can do as a class to improve are fine. Specific individual candidate feedback, change that sentence in that way is prohibited. Heads of department, again, will be able to provide more detail about how that works in different subject areas, but it has to be their work that they're producing. And masterclasses, so chances to work with groups of year 11 and year 13 immediately before they go into one of these high stakes assessment are welcome and are happening. And Rupert is in the process of putting together that timetable. But he won't have done it by the time you're listening to this or by Tuesday or Wednesday. So if you do want to work with year 11 and year 13 after school on Tuesday or Wednesday, then just go ahead and do it. And you can see that it's a 12-week term, and assessment in year 11 and year 13 is happening straight away, but then you've got in the last 2 weeks of this term they're off timetable, and then in halfway through the second half term the exams for the other year groups. So there's lots of assessments, and we want to be working backwards from that. So that's it. Look, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for everything you've done as a staff body so far this year. I've been so impressed by the commitment and the quality of the work that KA staff have put in. Students have had a great deal. They've had a really great deal so far this year. Productive learning in difficult circumstances. But I'm very confident that we've saved the best for last. And I think the summer term is going to be the most rewarding for us in terms of our teaching and for students in terms of not just their classroom experience, but learning beyond the classroom. The Oxford Residential, which we talked about in the bulletin, which is a brilliant opportunity for Year 12 students, is coming together nicely. If you're interested in supporting that, then let Adam Whitlock know. Duke of Edinburgh Award, that's obviously been a major national focus following the death of Prince Philip. We're expecting lots of interest in that. Again, there's an opportunity for staff to get involved, and both DofE and the Oxford Residential do have small payments. There's plenty of reasons to do them beyond that, to do with career development, but there are payments for staff, so look out for that as well. When I was putting together this presentation with the senior leadership team, they said, you've got to mention this, you've got to mention this. It's busy. It's KA. There's stuff happening this term. We've got the Year 6 Taster Day, the Year 12 Induction Day for the new sixth form. We've got new staff induction that will come to in June and July. We've got the virtual parents' evenings. People should have those dates now. But all of that we can come to in just the regular cycle of briefings and through the bulletin. But for now, have a brilliant start to the term. Thank you in advance for all your work on the training day and next week, and I'll see you around school. Take care, guys. Bye.